So hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation today. I am Kelly Stewart, the training manager with Gowan Consulting, and today we're going to be talking about the CDA course that we offer and answering some questions that you may have either submitted to us in advance, or if you have some questions that have come to mind and you'd like them answered today, that is what we will be doing for today's session. So I just wanted to start out with giving you a little bit of an overview, depending on where you're coming from and what level of familiarity you have with a cognitive demands analysis. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a brief overview. So a comprehensive CDA can provide an employer with a relatively clear picture of the cognitive needs or demands of a particular position, as well as the stressors that can exist and that might give rise to either mental stress or challenges to cognitive function within the workplace. So how do we use a CDA, or how can they be used, and depending on the people that are requesting them or using them? So typically, we're using a CDA to determine the cognitive and behavioral job demands. So we're looking at the overall job itself, not specifically an individual employee. We can use this information to help with job matching. It can be used in some cases for recruitment, looking at planning for accommodation or return to work, and having a better understanding of the demands and perhaps where some changes may be needed to decrease risk or improve work satisfaction and performance. So just to give you an idea of what is covered within the course, so we review topics such as an overview of disability management and the use of the CDA, review of legal issues and legislation that's related, understanding of non-apparent disabilities that can impact cognition and other disabilities as well, definitions for cognition and cognitive demands, so breaking them down and what do those components mean, being able to get started and being able to explain the CDA and knowing when you need it or when someone may want to use it. So why would they request you to complete this assessment? Being able to complete documentation for the CDA. So how do you go about that? What are some of the tools that you might use? Preparing for a CDA. So what is the information that you're going to want to collect, perhaps in advance, and review, and what type of tools you might need to help you be ready. And then as well to review some of the databases, looking at job demands and the history of the different tools that you could use. And this also includes submitting a sample CDA for feedback. So that would be something that you would complete and send in to us, and then I would take a look at that and return it to you with some feedback. So overall, how do we deliver the course? So in this case, we are looking at an in-person course delivered over 2 days. We would include things like group discussions and breakout activities, have some opportunity as a group to look at and practice using the tools. And then, as I mentioned, you would be submitting a sample CDA for feedback. So this would be something that you would take with you after completing the in-person sessions and work on it. We usually request a submission of that within around 30 business days after the completion of your course. And then once that's been done and we've been able to provide you with some feedback, then you would receive a certificate of completion for the course. So what would be the benefits of completing a CDA course? It would help you to be able to conduct in-depth cognitive demands analysis of a number of different job roles for a number of different purposes. So kind of how I had commented in the beginning, this information could be used to contribute to job descriptions for hiring, for clarification of job roles, the level of demand that might contribute to organizational planning, might support return to work, or a work accommodation. It might help with planning around consistency and standardization of job roles and titles in an organization. We have done some CDAs in the past, looking at multiple employees completing the same job role to see if there are some differences on how this job looks and the demands and what's kind of contributing to that to help an organization with some planning to improve consistency and standardization with their job roles. Then it might also be used to support job demands for increased employee satisfaction or preventing injury or illness. We'll be looking as well at things like using it in real life scenarios. So during the course, we look at some examples of job roles, and you have the opportunity to share as well information based either on your own job role experiences or jobs that you may have evaluated in the past for other reasons, and to provide some real life examples. So we did have some questions that were sent in to us. So I wanted to include them here, but certainly if there are some questions that come up along the way, we can have you unmute and share your question or add that to the chat. We can take those up towards the end as well. So we did have some questions around what are the documents needed for the CDA. So in order to complete a CDA, is there some type of template, that type of thing? So typically we are using a modified version of a specific tool, and we will look at that within the course. Sometimes employers may have a template that they would like you to complete. So they may have done other CDAs in the past, or they have some organizational consistency standards that they would like how the document looks, that type of thing. So sometimes we are working on adapting those with what the employer is asking for in terms of the template that we're using. Some documents that you may need when conducting the CDA may be to request some specific documents from the employer or manager that you find will be helpful for you to analyze the job. So what you would request can vary based on a number of different factors. So it may be different depending on the size of the employer. Sometimes they may not have all the documents that you may be asking about. Sometimes larger organizations may have more detailed and more standardized documents, but not always. And we will cover what those documents are a little bit more detailed in the course. One of the things that you want to even start out with asking about is there a job description for the position? So then the next question that we have there was asked about ensuring that you receive fulsome answers during the interview process, and with some concerns around the impact to results. So I'm not 100% sure. The initial question was asking about the impact of, oh, sorry, I'm getting a little bit ahead there. So when we're talking about getting the fulsome answers and impacting the results, really you should be asking any questions that you think are needed to clarify information. So if you're thinking that you're not getting the full information that you need to accurately provide an overview of the cognitive demands, then you may have other questions, and it's important to ask those questions. Sometimes those questions may come up along the way. So it may be when you're in the middle of observing the employee completing that job role, maybe that person that is filling that role at that time can answer some of those questions. Sometimes it may be questions that you need to ask, perhaps a manager or a supervisor after you've completed the observation portion. I did have one question that came in asking about how to understand the impact of return to work on cognitive demands. I'm not 100% sure that I did understand what that person was asking. So if that's you and it comes up, we can talk about it again at the end. I'm wondering if they were asking the level of cognitive demand might impact the person's ability to return to work. So then when looking at cognitive demands and job posting match for desired candidates, so do those things match up? Not always. So sometimes organizations may not have completed a detailed cognitive demands analysis of their job. It's not to say that the information that they've listed on the job posting is inaccurate, but you wouldn't necessarily be able to just use a job demand posting to determine the full extent of the cognitive demands of the job. It can depend on a number of factors, what information is in that posting. Not all postings per se clearly define what the cognitive demands of the job are. And even if they do include, it's hard to say how accurate that information is. Is that old information? Has there been updates? That type of thing. And really, usually it's just more of a general overview than really in-depth information about the cognitive demands. And not always, organizations are not always able to really have an in-depth knowledge of those cognitive demands and how to clearly communicate them in a job posting per se. Someone did ask a question about multitasking versus task with switching, and is multitasking really a thing? So when we're kind of looking at what some people would call multitasking, often we're looking at a person's abilities around divided attention or alternating attention. So are they able to attend to complete the tasks at hand that may be occurring either simultaneously or kind of in conjunction? And what is that demand on that person? Okay. So I did have some questions as well around that there are a number of methods to gather information for the CDA. So what was really needed? What are we looking at for that? So it might include things like interviews, reviews of job-related documents, observation of someone completing the job. So depending on the purpose that you've been requested to complete this, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to observe the person who always works in that role, but someone who is perhaps filling the role at that time may be appropriate. We're using often an adapted version of the City of Toronto Jobs Demands Analysis tool. So that is what we will be reviewing in the CDA course. And that is something that was developed by therapists, ergonomists, occupational health personnel, and as well as a consulting psychiatrist. And it's based on their experience with a broad spectrum of jobs and workers over several years. So that's what we're using, and we use sort of a modified version of that, and we kind of go into and explaining that why within the course. So some of the objective data that's collected, you want to have some considerations around the frequency of tasks, the environmental factors that might be impacting, so distractors or role interactions, how might there be overlap or interaction with other colleagues, their workflow, observations of the tasks that might fall under each cognitive domain category to be able to provide a rating. So we want to see what is happening in the workplace and to what level. So there was a question around incorporating cognitive demands into a physical capacity assessment. We have done that. Sometimes that is a request that we receive where employers are asking if we can also include some information around the cognitive demands when the key focus perhaps is looking at the physical demands of that role. And that's not a problem. You can do it jointly. It just may take you a little bit longer. There may be some specific tasks that you want to observe for giving you the information that you need. Now, there was a question that came in around what are the newer updated technology around cognitive and executive function assessments. I just want to note, like I mentioned at the beginning, that the CDA course is to evaluate the cognitive demands of the job, and it's not for evaluating the person. So there are a number of tools that we use when we're evaluating the person, um, if that is what we're doing. But that would be in the case of looking more at the person's cognitive function or functional cognitive assessment and not necessarily a CDA. There are a number of different tools that we use within our evaluations with clients if we're looking at something around return to work or work accommodation and their cognitive function, and reviewing, in fact, some of the tools and what is sort of best practice and current use. However, that's not really the scope of the CDA course. That's not something that we would necessarily be looking at the specific tools for evaluating the individual. But I do want to mention here that, if this is something that you are interested in and have been looking for more information about, that's certainly something that we can look at offering in the new year. So if there's enough interest where people are looking at how do I go about evaluating the individual person and making recommendations for the individual related to cognitive function in the workplace, that's something that we could look at. Now, the question that came in was asking about CDA versus neuropsych evaluations. It wasn't too clear, so there wasn't much more information. However, I'm wondering if this person was just asking about if you are asked to complete a comparison once both assessments have been completed. So we do this sometimes. We have been requested to complete a comparison where perhaps an employee has participated in a neuropsych evaluation, and then we may have completed a cognitive demands analysis of their specific job role, and then are taking a look at both documents together to see if we can make some recommendations or identify perhaps some risks to the employee coming into that role. Are there some challenges that perhaps they may not be able to come back to that role, or can we make some recommendations around how they might be able to be accommodated? So we're looking at the information that's provided to us on that assessment. And oftentimes the neuropsych assessments that I've seen come back when we're doing these types of comparisons have been quite thorough. So the information that's on there has been quite helpful to be able to look at the cognitive domains on the CDA and make some type of a comparison and make some recommendations. Now, we did have some questions around fee range. So I believe that the person was just asking about if you had been asked to complete a CDA, if an employer contacts you and this is a service you're providing. It can depend on a number of factors what you may want to charge for this. So it could be the complexity of the role being evaluated. Some people may consider a flat rate versus an hourly rate. You want to consider, your own experience, the experience of the service provider and what you might charge for something like that. It is challenging to try to find specific information. A lot of companies that offer these type of services don't necessarily publish what they charge. Often they'll request people to get in touch with them and discuss to have a quote. But if you do try to search, you can often find ranges from anywhere from 500 to 2,500 kind of range. Timeframes taking about 3 to 5 hours on site for the observation part, and probably additional time for document review, communication and interviews, and report writing. So sort of what I'm seeing on average is people reporting around 5 to 15 hours of their time in order to complete a cognitive demands analysis of a job role. So I'm noticing that we do have a question in the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that. And then if there are other questions that people have, we'll be glad to answer those for you as well. Oh, I just see that, just a comment there. But if you do have that question relates to a specific or comment relates to a specific section, feel free to add some context there if you'd like. Or if anyone else has any questions, if you want to either raise your hand or unmute yourself, you don't necessarily have to come on camera if you don't want to. Nobody has any questions for me today? Well, hopefully I was able to answer quite thoroughly the questions that did come in and just give you a bit of an overview of the course. We are looking at hosting the course in person towards the end of January. So we'll be able to update you on that. We just wanted to provide an opportunity for people to ask questions, to clarify, to help you identify that if this is something that you're interested in participating in or would be helpful for your learning, that you have a clearer picture of what's involved and you help to kind of answer that so you can make a better decision. Thank you for your comment there, Sylvia. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, you certainly can reach out to us by just sending us an email. You can reach out through any of Gowan's channels, so either by sending us an email, through the website, giving us a call, and as well, you can connect with us via social media. If you want to reach out and send in any other questions, please do that through the Gowan email, and I'd be glad to get back to you and answer any questions you have. And I hope to see you at the course. Thanks so much, everyone. Oh, yes, thank you, Monique. So if anyone does encounter any challenges when attempting to sign up for the course, please do reach out to us and we can help you get that sorted out in case if you encounter any difficulties or you have any questions. Thanks, everyone. Take care.